What's going on, Not Move Nation? Welcome to the Not Move podcast. Today is October 31st at 4:23 p.m. Eastern Time. It is the Halloween edition. First off, I'd like to say thank you to the supporters, subscribers, followers. We really appreciate you guys here at the Not Move podcast. And a special thank you to the sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, and the MLB and NFL Pro Shops. Thank you guys so much. If you scan that QR code at the top left corner of the screen, it should take you to all those sweet deals that we have here at the Not Move podcast. All right, so we have 2, 4, 8 games on tonight. Yesterday went really well with the money lines and spreads, but today's a new day. We're not going to get too happy about the wins or too down about those losses. We're just going to keep pushing forward here. So first off, let's do the injury updates. Last night, man, we had a late injury. Giannis was a late scratch. I think they declared him out after listing him probable. They ultimately ruled him out. So that was pretty wild. But Milwaukee ended up getting that win. All right, so let's look tonight. Luka Doncic, point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers. He has a finger/leg issue. He's been upgraded to probable. He is probable to play in this game tonight. Donovan Mitchell, point guard/shooting guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers, questionable to play. Oh, by the way, the NBA Cup play starts tonight. Karl-Anthony Towns, probable to play. The power forward/center for the New York Knicks. Something's going on with his quadriceps, but he's probable to play tonight. What just happened? Let's go back real quick. 1 second, please. All right. Trae Young, point guard for the Atlanta Hawks, out. Jamal Murray, point guard/shooting guard for the Denver Nuggets, is questionable to play in this game tonight. Paul George out, and he's been out. Darius Garland out. Paul George, by the way, is the small forward/power forward for the Philadelphia 76ers. Darius Garland out. He hasn't played all season. Jared Allen, this would be a big loss for the Cleveland Cavaliers if he was ruled out, but he's questionable with a finger issue tonight. Jalen Green, point guard/shooting guard for the Phoenix Suns, out. Benedict Mathurin, shooting guard/small forward for the Indiana Pacers, out. Shaedon Sharpe, point guard/shooting guard for the Portland Trailblazers, probable to play in this one. Andrew Nembhard, point guard/shooting guard for the Indiana Pacers, out. Kobe White, point guard/shooting guard for the Chicago Bulls, out, from my understanding. Dylan Brooks, shooting guard/small forward for the Phoenix Suns, out. Pirtle, the center for the Raptors, has a back issue. He'll be out tonight. Cameron Johnson, small forward/power forward for the Denver Nuggets, probable. Scoot Henderson, point guard for the Portland Trailblazers, out. Jared McCain, I think he's been out all season. Yeah, for the Philadelphia 76ers, point guard/shooting guard, he's out. Marcus Smart, point guard/shooting guard for the Los Angeles Lakers, probable. Mitchell Robinson, center for the New York Knicks, probable. Robert Williams, center for the Portland Trailblazers, questionable. Sam Merrill, excuse me, small forward / shooting guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers, out. And that just about does it for the most notable injuries. Obviously, there's players that are listed as probable. It's rare that I see players that are listed as probable that are ultimately ruled out, but the ones that are probable, we saw last night with Giannis. He was probable when we did the show, and an hour before tip-off, they ruled him out. So guys that are probable, big names that are probable tonight, Luka Doncic, probable. Karl-Anthony Towns, probable. I think those were the big names. Shaedon Sharpe, probable. But the ones that are questionable that we need to keep an eye on is Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray and Jarrett Allen. So a couple of guys from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And yeah. All right. So before I start looking at player props and stuff, I am going to make some predictions here on who I like on the money lines and spreads. Once again, I feel more confident in money lines and spreads than anything. And that's not to say that we don't talk about good things on the show about player props, because we certainly do. But I'm not gonna give a pick for every game, because there's some game. I mean, okay, so I like the Indiana Pacers tonight plus that 2.5. I would lean towards the Boston Celtics plus 1.5. I would lean towards the Cleveland Cavaliers minus 6.5. I like the New York Knicks minus 5.5. I would lean towards the Memphis Grizzlies plus 2.5. I would lean towards the Utah Jazz plus 2.5. I'd lean towards the Denver Nuggets minus 5.5. And I would lean towards the Clippers minus 10.5. So the two games that I like tonight are the New York Knicks minus 5.5 and the Indiana Pacers plus 2.5. I like them about the same. All right, so let's move into some player props. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Hope everybody's having a great day. Thanks for joining, stopping by. So I haven't done any research for this game, and you'll notice that I won't do research until during the show in these NBA shows, because I noticed earlier this year I would do a lot of research before the shows, and the sources that I used hadn't quite updated yet. So these sources should be updated by now, but there is a chance that we're working with 1 day old data. So let's just talk about the big names. Let's look at how do we want to do this. Let's start with let's see here. Let's go over to the fantasypros.com website here. I'm looking at defense versus position, and let's just see if we can target some weak defenses against a specific position. So the Portland Trail Blazers allow the most points per game to point guards, but Jamal Murray's questionable tonight. Um, who else would be running point guard for Denver? Well, that's who's projected to start tonight for the Nuggets. But I don't really want to look into a player that's questionable. But if you are interested in Jamal Murray props, the Blazers have allowed the most points per game to point guards this season. Indiana, I think Trae Young could have really, exposed that Indiana point guard defense. They've allowed the third most points per game to point guards, but he's out tonight. Let's look at a different position here. Memphis Grizzlies. I think they play tonight, right? Oh man. Well, I did mention Doncic is back, but Austin Reeves is that shooting guard, and the Grizzlies have allowed the most points per game to shooting guards this season. If you're interested in Reeves points, you got that working for you. I don't necessarily know what they're listed at. I kind of wanted to look at a different player other than Reeves, but he's been balling. Okay. The Phoenix Suns, yeah, they play. You know what? Let me just go try to pick a player. um, Knicks and Bulls. Trying to find a big time name here. Let's start with the earlier games. Let's just start with Siakam here. So Siakam, his over under on point total is 26.5. If you guys have any player props you want me to look up, I'll stop what I'm doing to address your questions. Siakam over under 26.5 points. How many points per game do the Atlanta Hawks allow to power forwards this season? Let's go check it out. They allow the fourth most points per game to power forwards. The fourth most points per game to power forwards this season. So that's good if you like Siakam. We're going over that point total tonight. And then I want to see Siakam versus the Hawks statistics. I want to see what he's done in his last 10 games against them. He's gone over the 26.5 point total in the last 2 out of 3 games, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 5 out of 9, 6 out of 10. And really, 6 out of 10. So that's good. 6 out of 10 games. Also, I mentioned that there's a good amount of players out for Indiana tonight. There is Benedict Mathurin, Nembhard that are out. Okay. So whenever I go look at the Pacers usage rate, I mean, I kind of like Siakam with all the injuries that these guys have been having. Indiana Pacers player usage rate. Siakam leads this team in usage rate, 30.5% usage rate. The next man up is Benedict Mathurin, who is out tonight. And then it's Obi Toppin, who is averaging 27.3 minutes per game. And then it's Nembhard. Toppin's really been coming off the bench, from my understanding. So, other than Siakam, Mathurin and Nembhard are the next 2 starting players that are out tonight. So there's a big gap between Siakam and these other Indiana Pacers, and I would expect him to see a good-sized workload tonight. Usage rate is high, highest on the team. And the next 2 guys that lead the team in usage rate are out. I feel like the Pacers played last night. Did they? The days kind of blur together. Wednesday they played. So what's today? Friday? Okay. So we won't bother looking at that. What else can we look at here? We can look at what is Siakam good at? He's good at scoring points in the paint. You know, we talk about this on other shows. Points in the paint are extremely valuable. You know, those are some of the easiest buckets somebody can score. And more points in the paint are typically scored than fast break points. I do like to look in at the fast break advantage for these teams, but I do see Siakam ranks 26th in the NBA in points in the paint per game. So if Atlanta's weak at defending points in the paint, which they are, it makes me like Siakam more. Atlanta has allowed the second most points in the paint per game this season. And if I remember correctly, they didn't do good at it last year. Second worst in points in the paint allowed. And Siakam is good at scoring points in the paint. He ranks 26th best in the NBA. So he's right there with Sabonis, Jamal Murray, Avila, Julius Randle, Banchero at scoring points in the paint. And, Siakam, good at scoring in the paint, ranks 26th best in the NBA. And first on the Pacers. What else? We are working with data that's these teams have maybe played like 5 games. So let's just go look at points in the paint Atlanta allowed last season. They ranked 22nd. So I feel like that number that we saw for this year is pretty accurate. You know, sounds like they're pretty vulnerable to those points in the paint per game. And then fast break points. Is he good at fast breaks? Let's go take a look if we can find Siakam. Yes, he is good at scoring fast break points as well. He ranks 30th best in the NBA in that category. Atlanta ranks 22nd in that fast break points allowed per game this season. And then last season, Atlanta ranked 21st. So I feel like that number's pretty accurate. So I feel like Siakam does have a points in the paint advantage, a fast break advantage. And this guy's good at shooting threes too. So he does it all. He ranks 39th best in the NBA. So he's right there with guys like Jordan Poole, James Harden, and 3-point field goals made per game this season. And Atlanta has been doing good at limiting the three-point ball this year. They ranked 4th best at preventing that. But last year they ranked 25th. So I feel like that number could be somewhere in the middle between 4th best and 25th, since there is such a big gap between the two. This season, it's just worth looking at what Atlanta has allowed to the power forward position in regards to 3-point field goals made per game. They've allowed I mentioned Atlanta has been limiting 3-point field goals really well this year, but specifically to that power forward position, they've allowed the 9th most to power forwards this year. So, this is looking like a great spot for Siakam. And, obviously there's some other research that could be done. I don't want to just get tunnel vision and look into one guy. But my last thing that I want to do here is look at Siakam versus Porzingis, because Porzingis used to play for a different team. And I just want to see, how many times Siakam has gone over that total. And if he hasn't gone over any times against Porzingis, I'm not necessarily concerned because I don't think Siakam has ever had the usage that he's going to most likely get tonight in any of these other games against Porzingis. And Siakam has never gone over that point total in 13 career games against Porzingis. And you'll always hear me finding things that, are that go against some other stuff. What am I trying to say here? Basically, I'm very critical, and I'm always looking at why would this not hit. So that could be a reason why it doesn't hit. He's never gone over that point total against Kristaps Porzingis. But everything else that I've looked at adds up. And I think it's a good spot for Siakam to go over the 26.5 points tonight. Okay, so I want to look at Atlanta because Trae Young is out, So I want to look at the Atlanta Hawks player usage rate, and maybe we can find out who for this team is going to be the next man up. And I'm thinking it will be Kristaps Porzingis and Jalen Johnson, and even a little bit of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Those are the three guys that lead this. Those are the next men up that lead this team in usage rate. With Trae Young being out, the next guy up's Kristaps Porzingis, and then Jalen Johnson, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So I do expect those three players to see an increase of usage tonight. The question is, which one's going to ball out? And I think we can look at how Indiana has defended against the point guard position this season, the power forward, and the center position in regards to points per game allowed. Not the Hawks, the Pacers. How the Pacers have defended against that position. Looks like the Pacers are about average in points per game allowed to power forwards. Pacers against centers. The Indiana Pacers have done a great job at limiting center points per game. So that makes me a little hesitant about Porzingis tonight. And then they have allowed the third most, as I mentioned earlier, points per game to point guard. So that makes me, really want to go, look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Now, I don't think I'll find anything that I found with Alexander-Walker in regards to his points in the paint, or I don't think he'll rank in the top 50 in the NBA in any of those three major categories. Oh, here's a fast breaks advantage. He's actually really good at fast breaks. What about three-pointers? No. But what is Indiana? What have they done to fast break points this season? Now, fast break points are not as valuable, once again, as the points in the paint, in my opinion, but it is something worth looking at. Indiana's done a good job at stopping those fast break points this season. And then last season, they were second best. So, that makes me a little concerned about Alexander-Walker. What about points in the paint? I'm almost thinking it's going to be the Jalen Johnson show, but let's go check points in the paint allowed by Indiana this season to opposing teams. They ranked 19th, so slightly below average. What about last year? They ranked 24th. So I feel like that number is somewhat true. And Jalen Johnson ranks fourth best in the NBA in points in the paint per game. So even though Atlanta is allowing more points per game to point guards, and I think Alexander Walker is worth a mention. And if you have the time, I would look into that if I were interested. Um, and I am somewhat interested, but we only have so much time, and I'm just going to look up Jalen Johnson because of a couple of reasons. One, that's where Indiana seems the most vulnerable, and that's what Jalen Johnson is good at. Another reason being is because he's besides Trae Young, because Trae Young's out tonight, he's the second leader in usage rate on this Hawks team. But Porzingis has been averaging 25.3 minutes per game, and Jalen Johnson is averaging 30.5. So I feel like there may be a possibility that Jalen Johnson plays a lot tonight, and Porzingis might play a little bit more too. But I think Jalen Johnson could see some big minutes. I could be wrong, but he has averaged more minutes per game than Kristaps. So let's go look at what was Jalen Johnson's line at. I think it was at 20 and a half. Yeah, 20 and a half. 20 and a half points. Let's go look at Jalen Johnson versus Pacers statistics and see how many times he's gone over that and throughout his career. Never. The question is, will he receive that usage tonight? And then let's just go look up Porzingis versus the Pacers. Last 10 games. I'm just kind of interested. I just kind of want to glance to see what his point total is at. 18 and a half. So he's gotten 19 or more in 4 out of his last 10 games against the Pacers. So if you like Porzingis tonight, you got that going for you. Now, from my understanding, Porzingis is also a pretty good three-point shooter, but Indiana ranks second best in the league in three-point field goals allowed per game. So I think I'd really be looking for Jalen Johnson or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Indiana's done good at preventing those centers from hitting threes as well this season, and Porzingis is projected to be that center. So, yeah, I'm concerned about Jalen Johnson never going above this point total in any career game against Indiana. But once again, has he seen the usage against Indiana that he will likely receive tonight? And I do just kind of want to check out Alexander Walker versus Pacers last 10 games. And, his role is going to be increased tonight as well. So he's never gone over that total. So I'm less concerned about that history there. I think it makes most sense for Jalen Johnson to go over that point total. And once again, specifically because of his points in the paint advantage. Up here. All right. And if you guys want to talk about any other props like rebounds, assists, we can do that too. But I was just kind of going over the points for the slate here. Boston and Philadelphia. I want to see if either of these teams are really bad at like points in the paint allowed. Boston's really good at limiting those points in the paint. They rank best right now. Philadelphia is somewhat below average. Fast break points are allowed per game. Philadelphia has allowed the second most. So who on Boston is good at fast break points? Sam Hauser. No, that's 3-point field goals. Fast break points is what I'm looking for, right? Fast break points. Philadelphia has allowed the second most this season. Who on Boston is good? in fast break points. Jaylen Brown ranks first on this team, 39th best in the NBA in fast break points per game. So I do think he has an advantage there. And if Philadelphia is bad at defending that three ball, this year they're about average. And what does Jaylen Brown play? He's listed as the power forward right now. Indiana. Or not Indiana. I'm looking for Philadelphia. They've done pretty decently at limiting those three balls from power forwards, but I mean, come on. Excuse me. Philadelphia has allowed the eighth most points per game to power forwards, though. But let's go see what his point total is listed at. Jaylen Brown. I also just want to check how Philadelphia does against the point guard. They're above average at limiting those point guard points per game. I think that's, a big threat for this Boston team as well as Derek White. What about, Pritchard is just worth glancing at. And then I'll get back to looking at Jaylen Brown a little bit here. Points per game allowed by Philadelphia to shooting guards. They've allowed, looks like the ninth most or so. 3-point field goals allowed to that position because we know Pritchard's a good 3-point shooter. It looks like Philadelphia has been slightly above average at that this season. But anyways, yeah, let's go look at Jaylen Brown. Over under 23.5 points. And I would, as I mentioned at the start of the show, lean towards Boston getting this victory. So just based on that alone makes me like Jaylen Brown a little bit more. Because I do feel like he might have to play a big part in that. And he's averaging, it looks like 26.8 points per game this season. Let's go see Jaylen Brown versus the Sixers statistics in his last 10 games. And I'm sure a lot of these games Tatum was in, He's gone over that total, 23.5 points in his last 1 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, 2 out of 7, 3 out of 8, 3 out of 9. His last 4 out of 10 games against Philadelphia. I think that's pretty good considering that Tatum probably played in a lot of those games. Looks like they played earlier this year, 9 days ago, and he had 25 points. Celtics player usage rate. I want to look at the Celtics usage rate. Jaylen Brown, 31.9%. That's pretty good. We saw Siakam, I think right about that range. And, I mean, his point total was 26.5. I think there's some other factors that have to do with that. But, I like his usage. And I like the separation between him and the next man up. It's going to be Derek White at 25.4%. And then the next guys that have that usage are 20% and below. So I like the gap between. That's telling me that Jaylen Brown's a big focal point of this offense. I like his points per game this season. And I like his fast breaks advantage. I want to look at maybe Jaylen Brown versus Kelly Oubre or something like that. Let's go look at that. Jaylen Brown versus Oubre. Because Oubre hasn't always played with Philly. But I just want to see in the last few games how many times has Jaylen Brown had 24 more points against Kelly Oubre. 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, 2 out of 7, 2 out of 8, 2 out of 9, 3 out of 10. So not great, but and something else we can do is just go to Jaylen Brown's game log. Look up these statistics here. And go to his advanced statistics and see if his points per 40 minutes is trending up. So before this year, it was actually trending a little bit down, but now it's at an all-time high. So I think this is a pretty decent spot here for Jaylen Brown to go over those points. Now, points in the paint. Jaylen Brown is good at points in the paint, but I think we mentioned that Philadelphia was good at limiting points in the paint. They're not actually good. They're actually slightly below average. They rank 17th in points in the paint allowed per game this season. What about last season? They ranked 21st. So Embiid's been playing a little bit more, right? I think that's since Embiid's missed a lot of time, I do want to just before we move on is just to look at Jaylen Brown versus Embiid head-to-head statistics. Jaylen Brown does have a 24-15 career record against Joel Embiid, and Jaylen Brown has had 24 or more points in his last 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 7. 3 out of 8, 3 out of 9, 4 out of 10 games against Embiid. I think that's pretty good considering Tatum probably played in some of those games. If you can get that line at 23, so over 22.5 points for Jaylen Brown tonight, he's gone over that total in 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 6 out of 9, 7 out of 10 games. So that's against Embiid. So that just tells you how big of a difference a half point can be. But I'd still have to lean towards Jaylen Brown going over those points. And then let's go see here. Let's go see Boston. I don't think they've really been vulnerable defensively this season. They have allowed some fast break points. They are slightly below average in 3-pointers allowed. Let's go see where Boston's allowing the most points per game to a position. They've allowed the third fewest to point guards. They've allowed the sixth most to shooting guards, which could be beneficial for Edgecombe, right? Small forwards, they've allowed the second fewest to small forwards, the second fewest to power forwards, and then the sixth most to centers. So I'd be looking at guys like Edgecombe and Embiid for that offensive production for Philadelphia. And let's go look at the Sixers usage rate. Embiid and Maxey are the guys that are carrying the workload. The thing about Embiid, his usage is up, but his minutes per game are down. He's only averaging 21 minutes per game. Edgecombe has a decent usage rate, 20. I would wish it would be a little bit higher there, but 17.5. I'm not going to look into the Edgecombe stuff because he's new. I don't have any history to go with. But we have that Embiid history up, right? We have the Embiid history up. Let's go see Embiid, how many times he's gone over that 18.5 point total. Embiid points, 18.5 over under. Leads the team in usage rate, but his minutes per game worry me a little bit. How many times has he had 19 or more points in his last few games against Jaylen Brown? 0 for 2, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 6 out of 9, 6 out of his last 10. So that's solid. Let's gone over against Brown. Let's go look at Embiid game log to see if his points per 40 minutes is trending up or down or what the deal is this season. I mean, it's been on the decline. I think, it's tricky for me to pinpoint a player prop, but if you have one of those players on your radar, Embiid or Edgecombe, I can see them getting it done tonight. And we know that Embiid is capable at shooting that 3 ball, right? Let's just go see. Boston has allowed the third most 3-point field goals made per game to centers this season. So that's good for Embiid to potentially go over that point total. And just as a team, as a collective unit, Boston this year has been below average in 3-point field goals allowed per game. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully, that narrows it down for you a little bit. Maybe you were thinking about going with Maxey tonight. I would have to look at the other two first. Now Maxey probably has a higher over under on points. Yeah, 29.5. But I'd be looking for Embiid or Edgecombe with those points. And then Toronto and Cleveland. So this is tricky because Donovan Mitchell's questionable last that I checked. And if he's out, that's the question. If Donovan Mitchell is out, who is going to see the increased usage, right? Cavs player usage rate. I'm not going to look into the Cleveland Cavs props, but I can maybe help you with where Toronto's defense is weak and who could step up if Mitchell's out. I would think guys like DeAndre Hunter. There's also Jarrett Allen's questionable. So this could be a real sticky situation here. But, yeah, if let's say Donovan Mitchell's ruled out, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, who I believe is questionable as well. Let's just double check that. I mentioned at the start of the show. Yeah, Jarrett Allen is the one that's questionable. Lonzo Ball. Okay, so if Mitchell's ultimately ruled out, I expect Hunter, Mobley, Sam Merrill to pick up the slack. Maybe Lonzo Ball. Maybe Jarrett Allen if he's in. It just depends, If Jarrett Allen is out, then I would think Mobley. I mean, everybody might see an increased usage if he's ruled out, but the most significant, that's tough because Jarrett Allen is not the leader in usage rate for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but Donovan Mitchell is. So I think if Mitchell's ruled out, that's much more. And it makes sense. It's much more harmful for this offense, this Cleveland offense, than if just Jarrett Allen were to be out. But they both have a chance to play, right? They're both questionable. Now Toronto, let's go see where they're vulnerable. Points in the paint, which that I like to attack points in the paint. And the leaders on Cleveland in points in the paint is going to be Donovan Mitchell. Also, let's say Donovan Mitchell does play tonight. Toronto, point guard, points per game allowed. They're well below average. They allow the 9th most points per game to point guards. 3-point field goals to point guards. They've actually, and we know Donovan Mitchell's good at threes, or he can be. Toronto's actually done really good at limiting those threes. So hopefully that helps you, decide what to do if Donovan Mitchell and or Jarrett Allen are ruled out. I did mention Hunter, right? Let's just go see what Toronto has allowed to that small forward position, which is what Hunter is projected to play tonight. Toronto's allowed the 6th most points per game to small forwards. I just want to see if Hunter is. I just want to see if Hunter is on any of these lists. I doubt it, And then, Toronto's defense, they're about average at opponent fast break points per game. I already mentioned that they are well below average, near the bottom of the league in opponent points per game, points in the paint allowed per game. And then 3-point field goals allowed per game. Toronto's done good at limiting those this season. So, and then what about for Toronto? They have, I mentioned Pirtle's out for Toronto, so that could be a big hit. Scotty Barnes, Ingram, Barrett, Quickly. Which way would we maybe go here for points? Let's just go see if Cleveland's bad at defending against any of those positions. It looks like small forward and power forward. They've actually allowed the most points per game to power forwards. So Scotty Barnes, and then Ingram would be the next guy who I would think, since they're more vulnerable to that small forward position than other positions. But yeah, they're very vulnerable to points per game allowed to power forwards. So Scotty Barnes is worth looking into here. His over-under is 17.5. Let's go see, what Scotty Barnes is good at. RJ Barrett's good at points in the paint. Scotty Barnes is pretty good at it too. Scotty Barnes ranks 2nd on the team, 38th in the NBA. Points in the paint allowed per game by who? Cleveland. They've done good at limiting those points in the paint. They also did good at limiting them last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So this is a dangerous team to try to attack the paint with, especially if Mobley and Allen are playing. 2 good defenders. So I'm thinking maybe somebody's going to have to get him with fast break points or perhaps threes. What did we say about Cleveland's 3-point defense? It's weak this season. It had to be good last season, I would think, right? It was slightly below average. So who leads this squad in 3-point field goals for Toronto? Nobody in the top 50, so they don't have like a 3-point sharpshooter. I think they're actually pretty bad as a team at shooting threes. But Scotty Barnes is the first guy on that, in regards to 3-point field goals made per game. He's the guy who's getting the most 3-point field goals per game. And Cleveland has allowed the most 3-point field goals made per game to opposing power forwards, which is what Scotty Barnes is projected to play tonight. So this is looking good, right, with Scotty Barnes. Raptors player usage rate. And one of the reasons why I'm thinking that Scotty Barnes' point total is so low is because the Raptors do spread the ball, amongst their team more than others. I mean, Ingram leads this team in usage rate with 26.3%. A lot of these other guys that we've already mentioned are at 30%, 31%, and there's a big gap between them and the next person that has usage. But these guys are sharing the ball pretty well. And Ingram, like I said, leads the team with 26.3%, and then it's Scotty Barnes at 24.9% usage. Scotty Barnes game log. Let's Let's take a look here at Scotty Barnes' game log. Advanced statistics. Is his points per 40 minutes trending up throughout the course of his career? Is it lower this season? No, it's trending up. Every year that Scotty Barnes has played in the NBA, he's averaging more points per 40 minutes. This is his 5th season, and it's at an all-time high, 27.1 points per 40 minutes. These are all good things that I'm looking at here for Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes versus who are they playing? Cleveland. Statistics. If Scotty Barnes has gone over, hopefully he's gone over in about 4 out of 10 at least. Last against Cleveland, he's gone over that in the last 1 out of 2 games, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 4 out of 8, 5 out of 9, 5 out of 10. Better than what I thought. I like it. I think it's a pretty decent spot. Cleveland, I know last year they were a pretty dang good defensive team, but that would be the first player that I would look at for points. What's going on, Ivan? No, it's all right. Hey, I appreciate you stopping by anyways. I think the most notable injuries tonight, Ivan, worth keeping up to date with, is going to be, I mean, we have to keep up to date with everybody now, right? With Giannis getting that late scratch last night. I mean, nobody's safe. So Doncic is probable. Now, I did mention yesterday on the show, and I'm going to mention it here again today, that it's rare that I see a player as probable and then end up sitting out. So that was a rarity yesterday, but technically Doncic is probable today. Karl Anthony Towns, Shaedon Sharpe, I think it was Cameron Johnson for the Nuggets. So those are the probable guys, but Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen are both questionable for the Cleveland Cavs. So I think those are 2 big-time injuries to keep up to date with. And Trae Young's out. I'm sure you probably know, Ivan, but Trae Young's out tonight. Jamal Murray's questionable. And, Nembhard out. Dylan Brooks out. Poeltl, center for Toronto. But my favorite spread plays included the Knicks. It was the Knicks minus 5.5, and then it was Indiana plus the 2.5, and then I would have to lean towards Boston. Those are my 3 most confident plays today, but I would feel more confident with the Pacers plus 2.5 and the Knicks minus 5.5. As crazy as it sounds, man, the fact that Trae Young is ruled out makes me – I still like Indiana, but makes me like the Knicks more than Indiana, as crazy as that sounds. You would think it'd be the other way, but what did we see last night? Giannis is out. Everybody starts rushing to place their stakes on Golden State, and Milwaukee still ends up winning. So that's what I'm afraid happens here is people start switching over to Indiana, and then because Trae Young's out, but I still feel good about Indiana. But I think now that I'm thinking about it, I feel better about the Knicks minus 5.5 than any other play today. Yep, Jamal Murray game time decision. I do think that Jalen Johnson's in a good spot, Ivan. I was talking about him earlier. I think there's a lot of advantages for Jalen Johnson. I also like Siakam today. We were looking at Jalen Johnson, Siakam, Jaylen Brown, I think is worth looking into for points. Embiid, Scotty Barnes. I mean, just about every player props. I mean, it looks like we've had some good information about those players. I think it was Jalen Johnson who. So I think a big reason why I like Jalen Johnson is because Indiana is below average in points in the paint allowed per game, and Jalen Johnson ranks fourth best in the NBA in points in the paint per game. Also, with Trae Young being out, you could see an increase of usage from Jalen Johnson, but the same thing with Kristaps Porzingis. I forgot why I liked Jalen Johnson more than Kristaps. I think it had something to do with the 3-point attack, but it's in the video. Is Obi Toppin playing? I haven't heard anything that suggests that he's not, but I'm not sure if he's starting. So let's see here. Oh, wow. Good call. Yeah, Obi Toppin's out for about a month. Great call, Ivan, because Obi Toppin is one of the guys who lead the Pacers in usage rate. And we can go back to that now. That makes me like Siakam even more. Matherin's out, Toppin's out, Nimhard's out. So Siakam, really has to be that focal point for the Pacers, man. Over under 26.5. I think it's definitely worth consideration, But yeah, I looked at some other stuff when it comes to Siakam, and it looked pretty good. But Toronto and Cleveland, McConnell, he's just been out for a little bit. Hamstring issue. He's expected to miss about a month of action as well. I mean, this team is very banged up. This Indiana team. Knicks and Chicago. From my understanding, Chicago's terrible at allowing points in the paint. Yeah, they've allowed the most this season. Chicago has. They've allowed the most last season. So who on this New York Knicks team is the points in the paint leader? Jalen Brunson ranks 10th best in the NBA, first best on the New York Knicks in points in the paint, going up against the team who allows the most points in the paint per game this season and last season. Chicago has done pretty good at defending against that point guard position this year. They rank fourth best. Who is their point guard? Tre Jones? I wonder if we can find any Jalen Brunson versus Tre Jones statistics. Brunson. It's not exactly what I wanted. Jalen Brunson versus other NBA. I'm trying to find something. Here we go. I don't want comparisons. I want head-to-head matchups. Sometimes whenever you're trying to look at these other players like Tre Jones, I have problems. I'm not going to waste a lot of time looking into it. What about Jalen Brunson versus Giddey? Head-to-head statistics. Josh Giddey has a 6-5 career record against Brunson. What's Brunson's point total at tonight? 26.5. How many times has he gone over that against Giddey? 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 3 out of 7, 3 out of 8, 3 out of 9, 3 out of 10, 3 out of 11 career games against Giddey. So, and then what's his usage rate? It's not. Oh, it's at 32.8%. I'm just a little worried that Chicago's been good at defending points per game to that point guard position. I went to a Knicks versus Bulls game in Chicago last year. Knicks got smoked. Maybe the year before. Dang. Who else is good at points in the paint for the Knicks? I mean, yeah, Mikal Bridges is the next man up. That's the best in points in the paint. And he's projected to be the shooting guard tonight. Shooting guard, Bulls. Bulls have been good defending against the backcourt this season. Looks like the Bulls are really, really struggling against centers. And a little bit of it against power forwards. So yeah, Karl Anthony Towns, Mitchell Robinson. I know they don't rank high in points in the paint, but Karl Anthony Towns is a good 3-point shooter. Chicago, man, they've allowed the fewest 3-point field goals per game this season. They were slightly below average last year. It's just a weird spot. I can't really pick a player that I would look to go with on the fly here. I think I would just have to, start with Jalen Brunson, just because he's really good at scoring points in the paints. Brunson versus Bulls. Brunson versus Bulls stats. How many times has Brunson had, what did we say his over-under on points was? 27 or more points against the Bulls. 1 of 2, 1 of 3, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 5 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 5 out of 9, 6 out of his last 10. He's gone over the 26.5 point total. Vucevic. Brunson versus Vucevic. Brunson's gone over that point total against Vucevic. 1 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 4 out of 8, 5 out of 9, 5 out of 10. So yeah, I mean, I like what I see from Brunson. I just I'm just nervous because they've done such a good job at limiting points per game to point guards this season. And they're a little bit more vulnerable to allowing those points to power forwards and centers. Has Mitchell Robinson played at all this year? I don't think so. And they may ease him back in to the mix of things. But his over under on points is 4.5. Was he good at points in the paint last year? Let's just go look real quick. Points in the paint. I don't know. I'm not coming up with anything, but I remember Ayo had a good game, I believe, when I went to Chicago for that game. Dosunmo. Is he still? Yeah, he should be coming off the bench. Dosunmu versus Knicks stats. April 5th, 2024. Does that sound like it was right? 24 points for Dosunmu that game. Anyways, I have a hard time as it is picking between Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. I have a hard time as it is. I got to lean towards Brunson going over his points, the 26.5 before Karl-Anthony Towns over the 23.5. And I think what really does it for me is the fact that Chicago's been good at defending that three ball this season. And Jalen Brunson's really good at scoring points in the paint. And Chicago was the worst team last year at allowing points in the paint and the worst team this year. Only concern with Brunson is going to be the fact that the Chicago Bulls have limited those point guard points per game this season. So let's move on to this next game here. Lakers at Grizzlies. I mentioned Doncic is projected to play, but look here, guys. I mean, Austin Reeves is in another good spot because the Memphis Grizzlies have allowed the most points per game this season to his position. I mean, over under 24.5 points. Reeves versus Grizzlies statistics. How many times has he gone over that in his history against them? Went over in his last game against them. What did we say his line was at? I'm sure we won't find as good of history with Reeves. And honestly, he's only gone over in 1 out of 12 career games against them. But it was his last game that he played against them that he did go over that. But that's besides the point. The point is that I don't think Reeves has seen usage like this before. So when players have a significant increase of usage this season, it makes me much less concerned about their historical statistics. But if they have them both, then that's great. And I think we saw a player like that earlier, Siakam, I think it was. Not only is he seeing an increased usage, it was one of those guys, but his points per 40 minutes is out of this world right now. And so is his assists per 40. So, yeah, I mean, if you like Austin Reeves tonight, I can see him going over that. Now, here's my question. Is his line too high with now that Doncic is back? Because when we look at Reeves' statistics this season, I mean, what is he doing? 28 points, 41, 51, 25, 26. But from my understanding, he can coexist with Doncic, you know? So they both played in the Minnesota and Golden State game this season. That's when Reeves' points were down. Let me make sure about that Minnesota game. October 24th, they've played 2 games against Minnesota together, or 2 games as a team. But so that's my concern, man, is that Doncic is back and takes that light away from Reeves here. But, you know, points per game allowed to point guards by the Grizzlies is what I'm interested to see. And Memphis is slightly above average in limiting those points per game. And what about the 3 ball? How have they been against the 3 ball this season? Memphis. They've allowed the 3rd most 3-point field goals per game. What about to that point guard position that Doncic is projected to play tonight? Memphis. About average at defending against them. Memphis is much more vulnerable to the shooting guard 3-point field goals per game. Oh man. It's is there anything that Reeves does better than Doncic? Like fast break points, points in the paint. I mean, Doncic is real good at points in the paint. So is Reeves. Memphis is below average in allowing points in the paint per game. What about fast breaks? I mean, Hachimura. And then what about threes? Doncic is probably making more threes, I would think, per game. Oh, that's why. Reeves is actually making more 3-point field goals per game than Doncic. That's what I'm seeing here. Where's Doncic? I remember last year, NBA.com just didn't list LaMelo Ball statistics for some reason, and I'm not seeing Doncic on here. Why would his? And it might be because he's only played 2 games or something, and the search criteria may require him to play at least 3 or something like that. I don't know, but we know Doncic is good at threes. I don't know. This feels like picking between Karl Anthony Towns and Brunson, but I was leaning towards Brunson on that last one. Doncic versus Grizzlies statistics. How many times has Doncic had 32 plus against the Grizzlies? 1 of 2, 1 of 3, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 5 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 5 out of 9, 5 out of 10. What about Doncic versus KCP? KCP has a 14-6 record against Doncic. How many times has Doncic had 32 plus against KCP? 2 out of 2, 3 out of 3, 4 out of 4, 5 out of his last 5, 6 out of his last 6 games against KCP. Doncic has gone over. So I just think Doncic is going to take the usage away from Reeves. I would have to lean towards probably Doncic going over the points more than Reeves. Let me get back to these comments here. Why was Luka out in the first place? Luka finger/leg issue. Finger/leg. Okay. And then for the Grizzlies, I mean, where are the Lakers vulnerable at defense? Let's go take a gander. The Lakers are vulnerable to small forward and power forward points per game. So Jaren Jackson Jr. would be my first look. But John Morant's so good at scoring points in the paint. But how do the Lakers match up with points in the paint? They're actually pretty good at defending those points in the paint. They're above average this season. Fast break points. The Lakers are pretty good at defending against that. My guess is that they're bad against the 3 ball. Yeah, they're bad against the 3 ball. So who for Memphis is good at 3-point field goals? That's where I feel like the Memphis Grizzlies are going to have to try to attack the Lakers tonight. And it doesn't seem like Memphis has like a good 3-point shooting team. No, they're really fast break guys, points in the paint guys. So I'll probably just have to go with Morant or Jaren Jackson. Probably Jaren Jackson. I mean, I know Morant is good at those points in the paint, but let's go see what the Lakers do against that specific position. They're about average. I know Morant's going to lead the team in usage rate, probably. Let's go see Grizzlies player usage rate. John Morant, yeah, 35%. He's getting a ton of usage this season. What's his line at? 24.5 compared to Jaren Jackson's 19.5. John Morant versus Doncic head-to-head statistics. How many times? Oh, Doncic has an 8-1 career record against Morant. The Lakers have also won the last 3 games against Memphis, but Morant's had 25 or more points against Doncic in 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, 2 out of 7, 2 out of 8, 2 out of 9 career games. Whereas Jaren Jackson versus Doncic, how many times has Jaren Jackson had 20 plus against him? 1 out of 2, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 8, 5 out of 9. So more times than not, Jaren Jackson has reached his point total in games against Luka Doncic than John Morant. There's actually some big games here that I see from Jaren Jackson. I mean, he dropped 41 back in 2023 in a game with Doncic in it. And Doncic has had, looks like a couple of triple doubles against Jaren Jackson. So I'm not going to look into the triple double stuff much, but if you like Doncic for some reason on triple doubles, he's gone. He's had a triple double in 2 out of his last 6 games against Jaren Jackson Jr. And then what about Jaren Jackson versus the Lakers? How many times has Jaren Jackson had 20 plus against the Lakers in his most recent games? 3 out of 3, 4 out of his last 4 games, 5 out of his last 6, 5 out of 7, 6 out of 8, 6 out of 9, 6 out of 10. And then what about Morant? How many times has he had 25 plus against the Lakers? 0 for 3, 0 for his last 4, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7, 2 out of 8, 3 out of 9, 3 out of his last 10. And is Jaren Jackson's points per 40 minutes rising? It overall is throughout his career, but this year it's just down a little bit. I'm not going to count that necessarily against him too much. So yeah, I mean, I gotta lean with Jaren Jackson here instead of Morant. And I think it's really because the Lakers have been vulnerable to that power forward position. What about Jaren Jackson versus Ayton? Because Ayton used to rock with the Suns. Jaren Jackson has a 7-3 career record against Ayton. How many times has JJJ had 20 plus against him? 3 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6, 5 out of 7, 5 out of 8. These other games where his rookie. We'll just move on. Yeah, I'm thinking Jaren Jackson over the 19.5 instead of Morant over 24.5. DeAndre Ayton versus Morant. How many times he had 25 plus against him? Last 2 games, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, 2 out of 7, 2 out of 8 career games. So I'm seeing better history with Jaren Jackson. And why do I see a lot of people on the Grizzlies? Are the Lakers better team? Are the Lakers the better team than the Grizzlies? I have to lean towards the Grizzlies tonight, but who do I think's a better team? I think the Lakers are the better team. Now the Lakers are without, LeBron right now, but on the flip side, Memphis is without Clark and Edie, Scottie Pippen Jr., Ty Jerome. But when I'm looking at these teams right now, I think the Lakers are the better team on pay. Like just looking at the starting lineups, I mean, I think Doncic is better than that's close. Doncic or Morant. Let's say that's a wash. I think it's arguable. I mean, I would say Doncic is better than Morant, but it is arguable. So let's just say it was a wash. Austin Reeves is better than KCP. Vanderbilt or Wells, I don't really know. Let's wash that too. Rui Hachimura versus Jaren Jackson. I got to give Jaren Jackson the advantage. And then Ayton versus Jock Landale. I got to give Ayton the advantage. So, just based on that starting lineup, I think the Lakers are the better team. And fully healthy, both of these teams, I think the Lakers are the healthier team. But just the situation, I think, makes me like Memphis a little bit more here. They're at home tonight and some other factors. So, Phoenix and Utah, they just recently had a game, so I'm not going to really get into that too much. I think Markkanen dropped 50 something. Booker had a decent game, so. And what I sometimes notice with these games that are like back to back. Oh, also, Ivan, cup play starts tonight. Are you a fan of the NBA cup play? I'm not. I mean, I love the NBA just as much as the next guy, but I can't even watch a game with those courts. It just hurts my eyes, man. It's not easy on the eyes. I remember last year, man, I was doing good, and then NBA Cup play started, and it just threw me off. I'm not a fan of the Cup play, but we're gonna try to manage the NBA Cup play a little bit better this year than last year. What else? And then I'm gonna give you guys just some statistics because I know you guys don't just want to talk about points, right? You want to talk about maybe some assists and rebounds and stuff. So let's just go see, who. Let's start with rebounds. I think rebounds are fun, like rebound props, rebounds per game allowed, opponent rebounds per allowed per game. I'm going to look at the teams that have allowed the most rebounds per game. New Orleans have allowed the most rebounds per game to their opponents. So if you like a Clipper, and the first guy that comes to mind is Zubac for rebounds, any of these Clippers, I think is worth looking into. Let's go see where they've allowed the most rebounds too. What position? The fifth most to centers, which is what Zubac plays. The sixth most to power forwards. The second most to small forwards. Look, sometimes I try to get cute, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take Steph Curry for his rebounds tonight. More times than not, that seems to backfire on me. I think, with these rebounds, I think the way to probably do it is just to keep it simple. Zubac, but it's all about what his line is, and his history. I don't want to go look at each player and their history and all that stuff with the rebounds and the assists. But, you guys have a little bit more time if you're interested in the Zubac rebounds. They're at 10.5 is what I'm seeing. Zubac versus Pelicans statistics is what we can look up here. I mean, how many times has he had, in his last few games, 11 or more rebounds against this team? 3 out of the last 4 games he's gone over, but then it looks like he had some problems there. And something else worth looking at is Zubac statistics. Is he focusing on rebounds this season and the previous years? I mean, his rebounds per 40 minutes was rising, and this year it's down, but it's early right now. His points per 40 minutes are actually at an all-time high. But yeah, if you're thinking about rebound prop, that could be a place to start looking, is the Clippers, and then for Pacers. Now, I think Siakam is probably. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Siakam will get those boards, but I think some other guys may be going after them, and Siakam probably knows. At least what I'm counting on is Siakam is, trying a little bit less hard on those rebounds because he's going to be needed tonight offensively. So, anyways, Atlanta allows the 3rd most rebounds per game. Indiana, that game is just good for rebounds in general. Indiana allows the 5th most rebounds per game to opposing teams. Boston allows a lot of rebounds. So, power forwards and centers are really the guys that people look at for the rebounds, right? Pacers allow the 3rd most rebounds per game to centers. So if you're thinking about Kristaps Porzingis rebounds, you got that working with you, or the opposing center, Jackson for Indiana, Isaiah Jackson for rebounds, I think is worth looking into. Pelicans, we've already talked about them. And then what about power forwards? Cleveland's allowing the most rebounds per game to power forwards. They've been allowing a lot of rebounds this year. Scotty Barnes, I think Scotty Barnes could very well be on triple-double alert. Just based on what I look at, I think he'll get the points. I think he's got a pretty decent chance of getting those rebounds, especially with Pirtle out. So, and then it comes down to the assists, right? Assists allowed per game in the NBA. Where does Cleveland rank on that list? 12th. What are they allowing to? I said I wasn't going to look into the triple-double prop, and I couldn't help myself. I think Scotty Barnes could get it. I haven't looked at his history. I don't think he has a triple-double against the Pacers in his career, but looking. The thing I'd be the most concerned about with him is the assists, but he's got guys that he can pass to, and he does have a triple-double against the Pacers. In his 2nd most recent game against them, he had one. I said I wasn't going to look at the triple-double prop. I couldn't help myself. Player combos, triple-double. I want to see what Scotty Barnes is listed for. They don't even have him listed on this book. I wonder why that is. So, yeah. What else were we going to talk about? We can look at the assists a little bit here. Who allows a lot of assists? Utah allows the 2nd most assists per game. Phoenix. So I think that game would be a good game to target if you're looking for assist props. Both of these teams rank in the bottom 4 in the NBA in assists allowed per game to just opposing teams. So typically I want to look for those guards with assists. Now Jokic and stuff is a different story. And big men just in general can pass a lot better than back when I was growing up. But assists allowed by the Jazz, they've allowed the 3rd most to point guards. So if you're thinking about, Keontae George for assists, you got that working for you. Magic, Washington doesn't play tonight. The Clippers. Well, I wanted to see. something. Hold on. Yeah, Clippers allow a lot of assists to point guards. So whoever's running point for New Orleans tonight, fears. What about the shooting guards? Cleveland allows the third most assists to shooting guards. Atlanta, the sixth most to shooting guards per game. Toronto, the seventh most. What about team, though? Because that's what I like to. I mean, that makes the most sense, right? Target a team that allows a lot of assists to opposing teams, and then target a position where they're allowing a lot of assists, and then target a player that's dishing the ball a lot. That's the mindset that I have with it, at least. But sometimes, man, sometimes I don't know. I think it's more true in football than basketball. But sometimes when like something seems too good to be true, it is. And last night we saw that. I think it was with the over, just in the game. Seemed like it was just too good to be true, which is what I was mentioning about that over under 50.5. I think it was. But yeah, statistically, it looked great. Anyways, let's see here. Well, I appreciate you guys for joining today. I'm gonna have to get on with my day here. Good luck tonight, and I really do appreciate you guys for joining and the comments, even if you're just hanging out. We appreciate it. And I'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, MLB, and NFL Pro Shops. What else here? We're going to look to see, the next time I see you guys will probably be Sunday morning. I didn't know if I was going to do an NBA show today, but and before I leave, guys, I'm gonna do injury updates. I'm gonna look to see if we have any clarification on those injuries. Let's just look tomorrow. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 basketball games on tomorrow. I could maybe, do a show tomorrow. We'll see. I'll try. But yeah, Sunday morning for sure with the NFL and all of that. So, anyways, once again, my favorite plays tonight are going to be the Pacers plus 2.5 and the Knicks minus 5.5. I think Boston's also worth considering. So those would be my top three. But the other two, Knicks and Pacers, would be my top 2. And then Knicks probably be my top 1. So, all right. Well, have a safe Halloween, everybody. Good luck, and thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Not moved out.
This non-casual podcast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or reused without the authorized written consent of the Not Moved Podcast Network. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.